Welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased to introduce this webinar, Nourishing Minds, a free toolkit for teen mental health programming in libraries. My name is Sarah Ostman, and I'm Deputy Director of the American Library Association's Public Programs Office. Today, we will be learning about a really special offering from Seattle Public Library that is designed to help libraries in offering teen mental health programming. The Nourishing Minds Framework, funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services and with the support of the Seattle Public Library Foundation, is a comprehensive approach for libraries to support teen mental health. Over the course of 3 years, Seattle Public tested the digital toolkit, supporting librarians and teens with meaningful teen-focused programming. Over the next hour, you will hear from the Nourishing Minds team about the framework, resources, and how libraries have used the toolkit. A few quick notes about our Zoom classroom. Only our presenters have microphone access. If you would like to ask a question, please do so in the Q&A, or if you would like to communicate with your colleagues, please use the chat. If you wish to enable captions, you can do so with the Click Captions button. Here is our agenda for the next hour. We will begin with a warm-up activity, then a conversation about what is Nourishing Minds, Nourishing Minds in action. We will explore Amy's experience with Nourishing Minds, following with a link to the resources and time at the end for Q&A. Do feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A feature as they occur to you. We will raise them at the end of the presentation. We are thrilled to have two presenters with us today, Amy Tooley, Teen Services Librarian, and Luis Gonzalez, Digital Media and Learning Program Manager, both of Seattle Public Library. I will turn the mic over to Amy and Luis now to further introduce themselves. Amy and Luis, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us, and thank you all for being here today with us. My name is Luis Gonzalez. As Sarah said, I am the Digital Media and Learning Program Manager at the Seattle Public Library. My background is in human-centered design and engineering, and for the last 8 years or so, I have helped bring emerging technologies into library spaces like 3D printers, Arduino microcontrollers, and most recently, virtual reality for teen mental health. I have been part of the core team that helped develop this framework. And I'm excited to share that with you today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Tooley. I am a teen services librarian at one of our neighborhood branches at the Seattle Public Library. I have been working specifically with teens for the last 9 years and with youth in general in libraries for the last 15. My passion is facilitating programs that support teen learning and development. And I worked with Louise to kind of do some of the final testing of the Nourishing Minds content.
So what better way to get us started than one of the very warm-up activities that we do in Nourishing Minds? So if you could all take a Post-it note or a scratch piece of paper and write something that is weighing on you. Please rest assured that you are not going to share this. No one else will see it. This is simply for you to write down. I will give you about 30 to maybe 60 seconds to do so. Okay, I hope you've had some time to write down something that's been weighing you down. I want you to take that Post-it note or that scratch piece of paper and simply rip it up. I want you to set that aside for better or worse for the next about 60 minutes or so. We can't really do anything about that thing that is weighing on you, so I invite you to take a vacation from that thing and be present with us and engaged in this presentation. Um, if you did write this on a digital um, device, go ahead and vigorously delete that message or that thing. And again, I invite you to take a vacation from it. Next slide, please. So today we're talking about Nourishing Minds. So what is Nourishing Minds? It's a national initiative that was supported by IMLS, and it seeks to build on the findings and processes developed by VRtality. VRtality was another IMLS supported initiative. It was in the midst of the pandemic, we wanted to find ways to support teen mental health, and we did so through creating experiences that helped teens share about themselves and really use VR to stay connected. Very quickly, we realized how technically advanced it was to do this at scale. And so we took those learnings and folded them into what became known as Nourishing Minds, which is this initiative that focuses on creating a framework that supports library staff in implementing co-design by amplifying teen voice through adaptable tools that really cater to the strengths of your local spaces. We do so through an easy-to-use physical and digital format through Nourishing Minds card deck, and we frame it all in a kitchen metaphor to really ground and help us understand how it should be implemented. Now, we will be talking a lot about these resources, and I want you to find comfort in that all of these resources are very well documented, and you can find everything you could possibly want to know about Nourishing Minds at the website linked here, www.nourishing-minds.org. But we will be talking a lot about specific elements of the framework, and I wanted to make sure that you were aware that these are readily available for you. So the foundational pillars of Nourishing Minds, it's a framework for proactively creating programs in support of teen mental health through three core pillars. The first is acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. The second is co-design, and the third is creating brave spaces. Now, I want to emphasize here that when we talk about supporting teen mental health, unfortunately, all too often in society, we talk about mental health at the point of crisis or when someone is in need of professional help. And in this program, in this work of Nourishing Minds, I want to really emphasize that we are moving away from a crisis approach to supporting teen mental health and trying to rewind the clock as much as possible to really be able to support teens in their everyday lived experiences. So how can we help them cope with everyday stressors in a way that is way, way before any possible crisis can happen? So the first pillar is ACT. And ACT is really about having passionate support, but not necessarily trying to prescribe solutions in the sessions. We are focusing on active listening and avoiding judgments. And we want to inspire thoughtful reflection and intentional choices about what and how much we share. So if in a session, a teen shares that they like to get up at noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, on the weekends, we are not there to tell them why that might not be a good thing. We are there to tell them that may be a good coping mechanism for them. But again, we're not there to prescribe solutions. We're not there to tell them how to or not to do something. We're really there to listen and help understand where they are coming from. The second pillar is co-design. Co-design is something that I'm particularly passionate about. I really enjoy the process of designing together with a group of teens. We're really focused on these informal learning, situations and figuring out how we can really break down power dynamics in these sessions. We want to be able to figure out how can we take what teens are typically accustomed to in traditional learning environments like school, where they have a teacher, and identify ways that we can level the playing field. Just because adults may have more experience in something doesn't mean that teens can't equally contribute to something that we are designing. And third, brave spaces. You may be familiar with brave spaces. Oh, and we want to cultivate courageous environments. We want to inspire risk-taking and growth. We want to foster an inclusive atmosphere and stimulate creativity that fosters community among youth. So this is very literally just scratching the surface of what our framework is. These are the three pillars that guide a lot of our work. This is one of the resources that you will find on the website and in our cookbook, which I will talk more about in just a second. But I really wanted you all to see that there are multiple layers to this framework. And instead of going through each little piece of the framework, we really wanted to show you how it all comes together. So when I speak about the framework, people can typically see where ACT and Brave spaces really come together. And the question I most often get is why co-design? And so I wanted to take a moment to really share the importance of using co-design as a core piece of this work. So we really, like I mentioned before, want to democratize the learning. We want to share that everyone's ideas stand on equal footing, regardless of that experience or age. We found that co-design is really good at amplifying youth voice. As equal design partners, adults can help elevate youth voice. No, there is really no option to be a fly on the wall. If we have directors or assistant directors that come to our programs, we encourage them to also be equal participants. They will not just simply be observing, they will be equally participating in our activities. And so that is something that helps cultivate that culture in the Nourishing Minds program. And there's new connection opportunities. When you engage differently in these spaces, youth and librarians can transition from an expert role to more of a mentor role for youth. So the kitchen metaphor. This is something that I think really helps get an understanding of a lot of the pieces that the Nourishing Minds framework really brings together. So if you're anything like me, you like a nice fresh bowl of guacamole. And so if we take for a second the card deck and we break it up to its six categories of cards, we can see each category as an ingredient in our delicious guacamole. So that could be the limes are the tools and materials, the cilantro is the topic, our warm-up maybe is the avocado. And so a good dish, a good recipe will share, of course, all of the ingredients. If we go to the next slide. But a recipe is really more than just the ingredients themselves. A good recipe will tell you the steps of creating the dish. It'll give you clear instructions and share how much time each of these recipes is going to take, each of these steps will take. But a great recipe will also share with you how to be creative and adapt maybe a missing ingredient or how to adapt something that you have to make it part of the dish. So let's say in your guacamole, you don't really like tomatoes. Maybe that looks like you don't have a very big space in your library to do this program. Maybe we take it out. Maybe we figure out how we can adapt that space to suit the activities that we're trying to do. Maybe you really like lime. Maybe your library got a donation to talk more about teen mental health or create programs around teen mental health. Maybe you can use those additional funds to have a pizza party at the end or to provide stipends for participants so that they can participate for such a long program. Next slide, please. So if you put all that together, you can have a delicious guacamole, or in this case, a successful program and individual session for each of your Nourishing Minds program. So leaning further into this kitchen metaphor, the resource book that encapsulates all of our work, we call our cookbook. And so this is an 88-page document that walks you through how we arrived at this framework, all of the cards. It shows you a breakdown of what's included in each card, and most importantly, how to use those cards to create your session plans to lead to your successful programs. For example, this is one page that's included in that cookbook. It highlights the different elements of each card, the front and the back. So just going over this very quickly, the front of the card, you can expect a high-level overview of what the activity is or what the topic is. Each card on the top left will tell you which of the 6 categories it belongs to. On the top right, it will show you, if applicable, how much time that activity will take. And then the back gives you a more in-depth look at how the activity can be ran and what are some recommendations that we have for making that a successful topic or activity. So the cards themselves are, again, just the ingredients to get you started. And so when we talk about these 6 categories, when you're first getting into developing your program, you really want to focus on the first 4, which are warm-ups, topics, tools and materials, and your co-design activity. This is really where you should be spending the majority of your time for the first, maybe even second time you create a Nourishing Minds program. It really is helpful to focus on these 4 specific categories to craft your sessions before adding more complexity through the opportunity and constraint cards. Now, I do encourage you to eventually work your way towards including these cards because I do believe that they are critical in helping you continue to grow as a facilitator and to really anticipate how you can evolve the sessions into something that really caters to the opportunities in your specific community. But it can be a lot, and we recognize that. And so in order to make sure that you're successful, we want you to focus on only those first 4 categories. And so let's take a look at an example set of cards. So the first category here is warm-up. And this particular one is constructive destruction. So the warm-up that we did at the beginning is actually an adaptation that I created between constructive destruction and leave it at the door. They're 2 separate warm-ups, and they work a little bit differently than how we did them today, but I found this adapted version to work really well in a lot of environments. So warm-ups really help start the session on the right foot. It is very clear how the activity is structured with clear steps, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from many library staff that this is among their favorite categories of cards. Next are our topics. So sometimes it is difficult to come up with an idea for a topic to cover in a particular session, and that's the gap that this category of card is aimed to fill. So for example, here we have Name That Stress. We want to be able to figure out how we can identify stressors in our everyday lives, and so that would be the focus of this particular session. And then tools and materials. We have writing utensils, so everyday pens, papers, things to help us jot our ideas down. And the final card in that first level of recipe is our storyboard activity. So this is a co-design activity, and here we're taking that topic and figuring out how we can create a storyboard from that topic. And we'll get into an example of what a session plan looks like, but essentially you would take those 4 categories of cards and figure out how you would craft your session plan around it. For the first few programs that you're doing, if you are very well versed in facilitating, you may be feeling like you can jump into the level 2, and that would be adding a opportunity card. And so this is where we are really thinking about what opportunities do we have in our specific library, in our specific branch, that we can leverage to really improve our sessions. And so, for example, here in this card is called Freedom. And so this could look like bringing a small Bluetooth speaker and allowing the teens to create a playlist to play during the co-design activity. Once you become much more comfortable with facilitating, you would know what best to implement in this freedom aspect. But again, we want to really bring in youth and help amplify their voice, make them feel like this space is something that is really serving them. And this is a great way to do it. Then we go to the flip side. Once you get to level 3, it's time to start thinking about things that may start to impede the success of your session. So here we have a lack of interest and engagement. What would you be able to do in a session when you start to see a bit of lack of interest or engagement? And so all of these cards are to be used outside of the program. They're to help you prepare for your program. Please do not bring the cards to the session and expect to create the session with the teens. Trust me, we tried that on the very first iteration of this, and it did not go very well. Very quickly, we learned that this was a tool to be used in preparation for a program and not necessarily during the program. If you get to maybe level 4 or 5, that could be something that you try to implement in your sessions. But I would really encourage you to start with these 3 levels. And so, like I said earlier, a great recipe will really walk you through all of the steps and show you where things can be adapted. And so here is again a level 1 basic recipe where you will go through these 5 steps. You will first start out with identifying a goal for your session. So maybe your goal is creating a space where adults, teens, and peers can learn about mental health, develop conversations to discover strategies that can help mental health through group activities and self-reflection. You want to set some clear objectives. Identifying and recognizing their own emotions might be a good one. You want to have an establishing framing question. This really helps you as you're planning out, like orient yourself, like, is this activity really going to help the topic? Um, 4, gather materials and supplies, and then 5, the actual flow of your co-design session. So here it would look like you do your warm-up for 10 minutes, you have question of the day for 10 minutes, and then you go into persona building for 60 minutes or so. And of course, always leaving time at the end for reflection. Once you graduate to level 2, you can start to include some of the other cards. So in this case, we're talking about an opportunity, adding an opportunity specifically, trying to be intentional about how we can create a brave space in this particular session. And so that would be the added challenge for this next level. And then once you become a veteran of Nourishing Minds, you can start to see how you might consider different constraints. Again, here we are looking at lack of interest and engagement during the session and trying to figure out ways of addressing those concerns well before they happen. So I will give you just a very quick sneak peek because Amy will be sharing a lot more of what it looks like in action, but I did want to share to give you a visual representation of what it actually looks like to be in a session. So we often have a bunch of tables grouped together. Everyone's working around the table. There are plenty of sticky notes spewed across everywhere, typically the nearest wall. And then there are lots of papers and pens and other writing utensils on the desks. And we like to think of these sessions as working alone but together oftentimes. Sometimes it's best to just have a moment to write down your ideas before everyone shares. And so this is often a scene at a Nourishing Minds program. So where has Nourishing Minds reached? Throughout the 3 years, we worked with 8 library systems to really refine the framework and the resources. I am a big proponent of iteration, so we went through 6 or 7 different iterations of all of these tools and materials and resources. And ultimately, we were able to offer professional development opportunities for 29 library staff from these systems, and over 119 teens participated in various 6-week structured co-design programs. So what does that look like on a US map? Well, it looks like this. All of the green states are the ones that were part of our initial cohort and library programs. And if you go to the next slide, as part of the dissemination of this work, we offered 100 printed copies of this framework and the cookbook, the cards, the placemat. And so we were able to send out these 100 kits to all of these states. And so on the website, there was supposed to be a mechanism that stopped people from claiming one of these copies once we reached those 100 that we had available. And unfortunately, that didn't work. And so if you go to the next slide, there was even more states that had requested these kits than we had available. The kicker here is that all of these were claimed in less than 72 hours. So it was amazing to see uh, uh, just the real drive for people to understand what Nourishing Minds is and to bring it into their library spaces. Now, I would like to apologize for anyone that claimed a kit well past the time we had, or well past the amount that we had. And so we hope to offer more in the future, but no promises. So what do library staff need to succeed? I would say this is a really good starting point, but this is of course going to vary depending on where, it's going to vary depending on the level of experience of your staff, but I would say 5 to 8 hours to review the materials and really begin to understand the framework. Collaborating to plan a Nourishing Minds program has really led to the most success that we've seen. So that could be with another library staff member, or if you are the sole person responsible for bringing programs into your library, maybe you partner with a community partner or a volunteer that you trust to really help you collaborate on bringing Nourishing Minds into your library space. And I would say roughly that might look like 2 hours a week of work. And then ultimately co-facilitating the Nourishing Minds program, which again, we recommend is a 6 to 8 week program. We want to build relationships in these space. And as we all know, that takes time to really build that relationship with teens and for the teens to build amongst themselves. And so we found a 6 to 8 week program to really reflect a successful building of that relationship and really making progress to supporting teen mental health. And after each session, and especially at the conclusion of your program, having built-in time to reflect. We want to make sure that the sessions are going well and learning what is going well while the sessions are happening and being able to adjust in real time. But also at the end of the program, how can you best change the program or adapt the program as for your next iteration. And with that, I will pass it to Amy to share her experience.
Thank you, Louise. Yeah, so for this next part, I'm going to share some of my experience planning and facilitating a Nourishing Minds series here at my branch. And I will share an overview of my Nourishing Minds series, the planning and recruitment process, then I'll go deeper into the actual content of the sessions, then I'll share reflections, actual tips, and lessons learned. And then we will have plenty of time for questions. And I will note that all of the photos you see during my part of the presentation are from that session series that I ran. Next slide, please. So here's some quick facts about the program that I ran. I facilitated 6 sessions for this series. Each session was 2 hours long from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. on Wednesdays, which is the early release day for my school district. So programming was well at that time. I had 13 teen participants between grades 8 and 11 from 5 area schools. Teen participants received a $200 gift card stipend and 12 service learning hours. The stipend was provided by the IMLS grant and was an added incentive since we needed participants. We absolutely needed participants because this was part of the grant iteration. So we had that added incentive, and we do not expect you to provide stipends to your teens if that is not something you can do. Next slide, please. So moving into the planning, for the goals, we developed internal goals that guided all of our sessions. These goals were creating sessions where teens can start to acknowledge and process emotions, normalizing and destigmatizing conversations around mental health, utilizing tools that can support mental well-being through group activities and self-reflection. And then finally, when looking back and reflecting, I realized an unwritten goal was prioritizing relationship and team building in all of the sessions. Next slide, please. So for the planning process, I know Louise spoke a bit about how you might get prepared to plan your own series. And so I was fortunate enough to have supported another teen librarian in developing her Nourishing Minds series previously. So I was somewhat familiar with all of this content. I also worked with staff at SPL like Louise to understand the Nourishing Mind Framework and get feedback on my session drafts and brainstorm my approach. And as Louise mentioned, I spent a lot of time looking at the materials. I had it like all laid out over my desk. I moved stuff around. So I really recommend taking a lot of time there. I also especially looked at the sample session plans and the card deck to get a sense for how to put everything together. I iterated a lot. I tried out different combinations and sequences before finalizing my sessions. I also thought through how some of the sessions could build on previous sessions, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. And then finally, I co-facilitated each session with colleagues familiar with the program, and they also helped with feedback and session planning. Next slide, please. So for the teen recruitment, I promoted this program with teens that I'd already worked with in different service learning programs. I also had some of those teens referred new teens to me, and then there were a few other teens who had expressed interest in teen service learning. So from that kind of mix of recruitment strategies, I was able to build my 13 teen cohort. I did not use an application at that time, but I would now because the list of interested teens has grown so much. You can see here, this is a promotional flyer that my colleague Alicia used in her most recent Nourishing Minds series. You can see how she described the program to potential participants and then had them apply to participate. My school district requires service learning hours for graduation, so this is often our biggest selling point when we're recruiting teens for service learning. Depending on the interests and needs of your community, your recruitment may look very different from ours. If service learning hours are required by your school district, I'd recommend including this in your promotion if possible. You can also promote the fun, the art, and the creativity aspects, and as well as the opportunity to meet new people and the opportunity to learn about mental well-being in ways that can help teens and their friends. Next slide, please. So moving into running the sessions, as Louise mentioned, you can see this was my every session set up with the tables in a rectangle where all the teens could see each other and have ample space for kind of hands-on work. You'll also see the momentary assessment there. That was always on the board. And the momentary assessment, if you're not familiar with it, is one of the cards in the card deck. So if I'm mentioning anything that doesn't make sense to you yet, look at the card deck and it will explain what these activities are, what they mean, why you might use them. So we had that momentary assessment at the beginning, at the end of each session. And then for supplies, we always had would you rather cards to spark conversation, all of the sticky notes, all of the markers, all the Sharpies, like Louise mentioned, and then as well as name tags and snacks at every session. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of the 6 sessions with the main topics and co-design activities listed. I'm going to speak briefly about each one in the following slides, and you'll get to see pictures of the co-design activities in action. I'll also discuss how sessions 2 to 4 built on each other. Each session followed a similar format, relied heavily on the card deck, and centered around a main co-design activity. And all of these Session plans are linked to PDFs of the actual session, so you can take a look at how I structured mine. Next slide, please. So session one. So for each of the 6 sessions, you'll also see one of the cards there on the screen, as well as photos from that session. So for session one, obviously this is the first session, so we spent some time talking about what to expect in the program, what my expectations were of the teens, and I answered questions. I introduced the Wild 8's individual brainstorming activity to help the participants brainstorm their ideas for our group co-design activity, which is building your wellness space. I started with this activity because it was relatively concrete. It introduced the Wild 8's activity that we would be using frequently, and it was fairly simple. You can see there, the photo on the left is the Wild 8's brainstorming activity, and then the next 2 photos are how the teams designed in groups those wellness spaces. Next slide, please. So for session 2, our main co-design activity was persona building. Teams worked in groups to design a persona. That's a fictional character that they could use to externalize their own emotions and struggles. Participants were asked to come up with a bio, a background, personality traits, pain points, and goals for their persona, as well as talk about how their group's persona would behave in several different scenarios. We can see here just the creativity that the teams had for this activity. Next slide, please. For session 3, we built on the persona building activity from the previous session. Teams they went back into groups and they took those same personas and created a storyboard showing a day in the life of that persona. As the teams presented, the other teams wrote down possible stressors associated with each part of that persona's day. So you can see here, these are the storyboards that 2 of the groups created, and they're very different visually, but they still go through, from when that persona wakes up and then goes to bed at night and all the things in between. Next slide, please. So for session 4, we built on week 3's brainstorming of those possible stressors in the lives of the personas. Using the Wild 8's activity, teens individually brainstormed coping strategies that they could use to address stressors in their lives, or the ones listed from the last session. Sorry, my computer froze at my back. Okay. They then worked in groups using the coping strategies to create a dopamine, a menu for the brain with activities that supply us with the feel-good hormone dopamine. So you can see here that on the left-hand side, those were stressors from the previous session that the teams listed on sticky notes, and I compiled by category. And then on the right, they created a dopamine. So these are all these kinds of activities that are coping strategies. And it was interesting to see how they kind of ranked them. So like, for example, an appetizer coping strategy would be something that doesn't cost anything. It's really quick. It's a good go-to. And then something that might take a bit more time would be that entree. And then something that's like pretty special, maybe it's a little expensive, would be one of your specials. So it was really cool to see how the teens interpreted this activity and then, made it into a physical menu. Next slide, please. So for session 5, we started by using Wild 8's to brainstorm wellness goals individually. Then the teams worked in groups to create wellness vision boards to highlight wellness goals and aspirations. And this was a really fun activity. The teens went wild with the magazines, and I still have all of their wellness boards on the vault by my desk. Like, I love looking at them. So this was a really cool, just like really physical hands-on activity. And you can see how they, the one on the left is like super lined up and the other one just kind of everywhere. So it was really cool to let the teens just kind of have free reign in their groups. Next slide, please. So for session 6, this was our final session. We made sure to celebrate the teens and their participation. The teens voted on kindness stones as their final activity. We hung out, ate pizza, made kindness stones, and then we used the Rose Bud Thorn co-design activity to jumpstart our reflection conversation. Next slide, please. So the next 2 slides are direct quotes from the teams from that final reflection session. I'm going to just read one from each slide, and you'll be able to, look at them in more detail when you have access to the slides. But I think they really show kind of the wide range and depth of learning that the teens had through this program. So one of the teens said, "I liked how I got to meet new people and see the solutions for stress. I like the activities we do together, the jokes we have together, and being part of a community." So you can see from this quote that they loved being a part of this Nourishing Minds community. They loved meeting new people. They loved all the activities we did, the jokes that we created. So it was really wonderful to hear them say this in their own words. Next slide, please. So another teen said, "It's really fun. I really like the program a lot. You can see how other people think, or you might find other ways of coping with your stress and identify your stress." So I thought this was great in kind of encapsulating the teens recognized that they were practicing empathy, right? They were practicing learning about, thinking about how other people think. They were practicing learning new ways of coping strategies. They were practicing identifying their own stress. So I think that this really speaks to what teens can take away from this program. Next slide, please. So I'm going to share just a couple reflection points that as I sat down and thought about my experiences, everything I learned from the teams, everything I learned from facilitating, and hopefully this will kind of help you, think about why you might want to do this in your own library. So I really enjoyed planning and facilitating this program. The curriculum is incredibly hands-on, it's engaging, and it's very creative. The curriculum is also easily customizable. Because there are so many options, it can be a bit overwhelming. It did take me a little while to fully understand how everything fit together and then adapt it to my style. It definitely got easier after I had facilitated a few sessions and saw what was working and what wasn't. And I still like to speak to how customizable it is. I still use some of these co-design activities in other programming. So you can absolutely take from it and move it into other types of programming. Because there are so many types of activities, teens got to be creative and artistic in different ways. There are multiple ways to engage across the sessions, which worked well for a variety of personalities and learning styles. As you saw in the youth reflections, teens shared that through Nourishing Minds, they learned about self-care, about identifying stressors in their lives. They had overall increased awareness of mental wellness topics. They liked hearing other people's opinions. They liked meeting new people. They learned how to cope better with stressors, and that they'd be bringing ideas from our sessions to do at home. I mean, in my opinion, that's exactly what we were trying to do. So to hear them in their own words share that was incredible. And then finally, teens enjoyed the program. They were incredibly engaged. There was so much laughter. There was so much energy. We had high attendance and retention. Teens met and worked with teens they'd never met before, and everyone seemed to take something away from this program. So in my mind, it was incredibly successful, and I wish I had done more than 6 sessions. Next slide, please. So this is my final slide. I want to share just some practical tips and lessons that I learned in the hopes that it will help you when you're thinking about doing this in your libraries. So as Louise mentioned, and I will just reiterate, it's important to remember that this is not mental health treatment. It's not mental health training for staff. It's not professional mental health support. It supports teen mental well-being, but it's not in lieu of professional support. We made sure to be clear with the teens about this, and we had mental health resources available in the room. However, it did not end up being an issue. I imagine, depending on the teens you're working with and what's going on in their lives, that there could be kind of more intense conversations. So I think being very clear about this up front and having resources on hand just in case would be a great strategy. I think also having a co-facilitator is extremely helpful. It doesn't have to be someone in your library, like Louise mentioned. It could be a community partner. That would be a great way to have someone help you out with this. It could be a volunteer. So I think having someone who can help you just think through, give you feedback, kind of on the fly change things, and just have someone to bounce ideas off of was really helpful. The program is really dynamic. You'll likely make changes as you go based on how each week's session went. So I would say don't try to have everything nailed down, have a bit of give yourself room for flexibility because you likely will change stuff as you go. Be realistic, don't try to do too much in one session. It's not the end of the world. And prioritizing relationship building in the beginning will help the teens work together and feel comfortable. Fortunately, the setup for the program encourages this, but I do think being really intentional about it is helpful. Be purposeful about reflection, make sure to incorporate it into the co-design activities and at the end of each session, and take notes about what teens say. And then there are so many possible combinations that it can be challenging to decide how you want to put it together. I recommend looking at session plan examples to get an idea of how to get started. And then finally, just be excited about being creative. Like I thought I had so much fun kind of piecing things together and then seeing how the teens took what I brought to them, and it was incredible. So, all right, thank you. That's the end of my part.
And if for whatever reason you don't want to take my word for it or you don't want to take Amy's word for it, here is even more examples of library staff's experiences quoted directly from our library partners that helped develop this framework and this program. So you have kids driving from long distances for rural libraries to be part of this program. And just there's so many ways that we've heard library staff also take different elements of Nourishing Minds and include them in future programs that have nothing to do with the full 6-week Nourishing Minds program. That could look like taking some of the warm-up activities and using that to start a different program. Again, this is really if you take anything away from this, I want you to feel comfortable and confident that you're able to adapt these tools to fit your needs. Next slide, please. And so again, another set of quotes. It was really as we were putting this presentation together, it was really great to go back and see some of these quotes that we had library staff submit. It's just such a powerful way to capture the work that was done in all of these various library spaces. But of course, it's not just about library staff, it's about youth. And so here's even more quotes from those hundreds of teens that have participated in a Nourishing Minds program. If you need any more evidence of the power and impact that this program can have. So Amy and I have spoken a lot for the last 47 minutes or so about what Nourishing Minds is and could look like. And so here are some talking points if you need some help advocating to bring Nourishing Minds into your library. So library staff will develop a deep understanding of these 3 core pillars, ACT, co-design, and brave spaces. You will plan a program with an intentional focus on the unique needs of your community. You'll facilitate a programming series in support of teen mental health in more library spaces across the country, and you'll implement aspects of Nourishing Minds in future programs for richer youth experiences. And as mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, you can find all of these resources. You can find a ton of additional information on our website, and even short animated videos that were professionally narrated to help you learn more about specific areas of the framework to help you, again, get a better understanding of all this. And I'd like to once again thank you all for being here with us today to even consider bringing a Nourishing Minds program into your library. I know that it may sound like a lot of work, and it very well is a lot of work, but ultimately it is extremely rewarding. And maybe Amy can speak to this a little bit as well, but it's just so rewarding to see at the end what you're able to create, like a space that's really not like anything else in a teen's life. Typically from their point of view, they wake up, they go to school, they go home, and so we're able to create a really beautiful third place for teens to really learn more about themselves. And with that, I guess we open it up to questions.
That's right. Thank you so much, Louise. Thank you, Amy. We have just about 10 minutes left, and there are a lot of really good questions already in the Q&A. If you have additional questions, Or if you have put a question in the chat, please do copy it over to the Q&A to make sure that it isn't missed. We're going to hit as many questions as we can, but also take note of Luis and Amy's email on your screen because you can reach out to them directly as well. First question from Sherry is choosing the cards part of the co-design process, or does the librarian choose ahead of time?
I can take this one. So you choose the cards. So you break up the deck into the various 6 categories, and then you look through each one. If we're starting at that level 1, you would take one from each of those 4 categories and start to see if those cards would make for a good session. We've had a lot of different libraries use a different method. Some like to start with a warm-up, some like to start with a topic, others really get excited about the co-design, and so they choose a co-design and then figure out like, oh, what would be a good topic card that pairs well with that, and then create sessions that way.
Another question that came up a couple of times is about the ideal group size. Is there a minimum number of teens that this works well with? And are there certain recipe cards that work better with larger groups or smaller groups?
That's a great question. My answer to a lot of this is going to be it depends. It's the good thing and the bad thing about creating something that's so adaptable is like it really does depend on your space. If you can support a group size of 12 to 15 teens, that'd be incredible. In our library spaces, we typically aim to have 10 to 12 teens. We found that that is a really good group size. But also, if you have a really small space, like I could see it also working with like 5 to 7 teens. It just really depends on what your space looks like and what capacity you have to facilitate a larger group.
And another question that has come up from a couple of people is, do you have the same set of teens for the entire 6 weeks, or is it possible to do this with teens coming in and out throughout?
Can share. So for mine, it was the same group of teens, obviously occasional absences here and there, but I think in order to have, I think you could structure it as like a drop-in, but you would not be able to hit many of those outcomes like the community building, the relationship building, um, the parts that really make this like the most dynamic and I guess effective for doing what we're trying to do. So I think ideally it would be those same teams more or less throughout the whole time.
Great, thank you. And is 2 hours the ideal program length?
I did
Um,
2 hours and it was perfect because you have that kind of like shuffle in the beginning, so you lose about 10 minutes. And then I think to get through all of those things because the co-design, especially when they're like hands-on creating, like most of the photos you saw in my part, they wanted more time. Like they already got like 45 minutes, but they wanted more time. So it's not like you're facilitating for 2 hours straight. It's a lot of that time is the co-design. So I think 2 hours works well. Luis, do you have any thoughts on that?
it depends. If you have only an hour, there's ways to make it work, but just as Amy said, in our experience, uh, teens are usually asking for more time.
We had a question from Karen about service learning. They asked, referring to service learning, was it service as in it was part of your grant? Or in that that the participants became more able to support their peers by doing this? Could either of you talk a little bit more about the service learning connection?
Yeah, I can share for mine specifically. I did frame it as you're helping us with this, like test out these cards, which was true. So it was like you are helping us improve this program. Um, and also, I think the second option of like they're building their knowledge and skills to then bring to their peers. That's not how I presented it to them, but moving forward is likely what I would.
Here's a great question from Cynthia. What do you look out for in teens to determine if they need more than what Nourishing Minds can offer, as in professional help? Do teens just self select? You mentioned a disclaimer. Is this put in the recruitment flyer as well?
That's a great question. I think to answer the second part of that question, it would likely be as we are inviting teams to join us. So whether that's part of the application part, making it very clear that this is not a teen mental health like treatment or any professional teen mental health support, that would likely be part of the application. Or when I was inviting teens to join, I would be very clear about that when they were joining. I think in terms of the first part of the question, just using your professional judgment as you would with any team that you're working with. If they seem withdrawn, or, if they're like any of those kind of typical symptoms we might see where teens are really struggling, I would look for those. And I think that would warrant like a stepping aside after the program to check in and seeing kind of how the team is doing and if it makes sense to refer to another kind of mental health focused resource.
What about adapting this for staff development? Danielle says, I can see library staff possibly wanting to go through this as a group. Is that something you thought about, Luis, or tried?
Yeah, we've as part of iterating through all of these resources, we did have a lot of like staff only sessions where we were working through these different co-design activities and these different warm-ups. And I think you definitely bring like the opportunity to learn more about each other. And so it's again part of that relationship building, while also helping you to figure out how you can facilitate different sessions. I brought it into my department, and during our team meetings, I usually start with a warm-up activity from Nourishing Minds. So it's completely separate from the Nourishing Minds program, but it's a good way for all of us to become present ourselves and get ready to talk about whatever we're talking about that day.
Alexandra asked an interesting question too that I was wondering about. Have you encountered any challenges in your groups? For example, a heated or emotional conversation between teens, and how did you resolve it or de-escalate? Do you offer tools to support the librarians or facilitators when faced with those situations?
So I haven't come across that situation. I think we the way we break up the session really helps people be very reflective about what they're sharing. We have moments where we are working by ourselves, writing things down and really getting our own thoughts on paper. And then we have moments where we are all sharing out what we wrote. And so it kind of helps mitigate any tension because we're really working by ourselves and then sharing amongst each other. And then as facilitators, we figure out how we can blend the things that the teens are communicating into this larger framing question or the larger topic that we're talking about on a given day. I'm sure that there is a possibility that that comes up, but I personally haven't experienced it, and with the libraries that we work with, I haven't heard of anything.
Yeah, I would say I saw a little bit of kind of more heated conversation and a couple times in the session that I facilitated, and it was I think around um like a persona's family member having substance abuse disorder, and there being a kind of a conversation that had like some judgment around that, and it was clear that one of the teens had, I'm making an assumption, but I think that the teens bring that from her personal life, that she might have had a family member with substance use disorder. So we kind of, the other facilitator and I stepped in and we just kind of like did a little pause, and then we talked about, just how we don't know what people are going through, and we're not here to like judge the personas, like we're here to like be curious and learn about them, but we're not here to pass judgment. So just again, like kind of anytime you would deal with that in any kind of like teen program, I think just trying to address it with curiosity and like non-judgment, and encouraging the teens to do the same and redirecting.
So many wonderful questions. I wish we had more time to get to them all, but we are out of time. So if you had a question that was not addressed, please do reach out to Luis and Amy directly. They have enthusiastically told us that they would respond to questions directly. So thank you, Luis. Thank you, Amy, for being here to share this wonderful Nourishing Minds program. It's been really great to learn about, and we appreciate you bringing it to all of us. And thank you to you all for joining us. This session has been recorded. The recording will be available and at the website where you registered within a couple days. So please check there and do share it with your colleagues. Thank you all again.